Hey everyone, welcome to the Nintendo Prime Podcast, episode 59. 59. It is just Eric and Nate. This is, let's be honest, this is really the OG podcast crew. You know, we've always mentioned that Darren was part of it because he was in the original plans, and he was just bragging about how he's not going to miss any, and he's always going to be here.
He hasn't missed any for a while, except for February.
Except for the whole month of February, and then he was here for a month, and now here we are in the first one recorded in April, and he's gone. Didn't even give me a reason. Granted, it's better than him just not showing up.
Right. Hey, at least
he
told you. Yeah, at least he told you.
Yeah, you know why he told me? Because I told him to come up with topics because I'm so busy today. I was working on Prime News. I'm like, dude, I need you to come up with the podcast topics. And he's like, hey, by the way, I'm not going to be there.
Actually, yeah.
So it's going to be kind of a short podcast, probably the shortest podcast in podcast history.
Uh-oh.
Not just because I didn't have a ton of time to prepare topics this week. My bad. But it's just been a hell of a busy week.
And I don't know if there's really a whole lot of... there's a lot of news going on.
There's a lot of news. There's a ton of topics we could be talking about. I just don't... I just feel like ranting.
Yeah.
And I want to do it on a live stream. Now, technically, this podcast...
is a live stream.
Is being live to our $10 backers and up on Patreon. But it's a podcast, a pre-recorded, we consider it to be. So the rant, maybe we'll talk a little bit about it at the end, but most of you guys are going to get it through a live stream later. So... this is just one of those things that I just don't feel like having a super long podcast this week. That's basically the reason why we're not.
Yeah.
And we have so much news that we're actually behind on. We have to get up at NintendoPrime.net.
Right.
So there's that too.
Yes.
All right. So let's just get into the only two topics that we have for sure. And then we'll see if there's anything else.
I have one for the other one.
Okay, cool.
Just I want to get your opinion on it.
All right. So the first one, you know what? We're not even going to go do a topic rundown. With only two topics,
Yeah.
what is it a rundown?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So let's just get right into that first topic. And it is that there is an emulator now able to boot up games, certain retail Switch games. Right now, they showed off Cave Story and Puyo Puyo Tetris. What I actually want to wonder here is, what are your thoughts on emulation? Because a lot of people are not happy this is already starting.
Right. And I get both sides of the story. I think it's cool in the aspect of, as a designer myself, the idea that you can do this and have it be this close to, launch and stuff like that. And these games aren't extremely old. So the fact that you can actually have these boot already is kind of impressive. And that may mean that we may be close to getting, maybe some AAA titles, which would be really weird. But
Mario Odyssey,
right.
Everyone's waiting.
Yeah, right. Mario Odyssey 4K, Breath of the Wild 4K.
Breath of the Wild, they've already done that with Wii U.
They have?
The Wii U version runs on the CMU emulator. You can run that at 4K. You can run it at 60 FPS. They actually have a multiplayer mod for it now.
Okay.
They've put Shrek into the game.
Well, then
they've changed Link into Sonic.
Then I should probably go back and fix my article. But, I get it, and I get why people are mad, because, these are... games that are being created by certain companies, and that the emulation thing, as long as the games are out, I don't see as big of a problem. But if you start kind of coming across games that, what are the chances that you're going to emulate a game that's not out yet? But
like when Pokemon Sun and Moon leaked,
right.
People were playing that on emulators illegally,
right. Exactly,
before the game even came out, because the ROM leaked.
Right. See, now stuff like that, I understand where people get mad with that.
Well, yeah, that's understandable, and no one's gonna be more mad than at that time Game Freak and Nintendo, because it's like, okay, are people gonna go buy the game now that they've already played it?
Right. Where these emulations now.
These right now are irrelevant,
right? Because they're not.
This is basically
not playable. They're not
yeah.
playable.
Yeah, it's just like we have our foot in the door. So now let's see where it goes from here.
Right. So I can see both sides. I don't know if I made myself my arguments, but I can see both sides.
I think the primary reason people get upset is, forget if the game's even already out. Fans in general tend to side with the companies, in that they get upset because they view emulation as a means to play games without buying them. And
Right.
so their worry, their concern isn't so much for the bigger games like Zelda and Mario, blah, blah, like whatever, those games are going to sell. But say you have an ARMS 2 come out, and instead of it selling over 1 million units like the first one did, it only sells 500,000 because there's 500,000 other people who just
Playing it on emulators.
got it through an emulator instead.
Yeah.
Or didn't get it through are playing it on emulators, downloaded it illegally.
Right.
Illegal in the United States, that is. So it's a really weird thing for me because I like emulation. I've spoken in the past how much I'm against it, but I'm against emulation in the sense that you have downloaded a ROM and played it. Like in the United States, whether or not you own a game, it is illegal to download a ROM. That is the guise we have lived under for a long time. Now, I live in the United States. This is a United States-based channel. I know in Canada and some other countries, as long as you own the game, you can download the ROM. It's not illegal. And in some areas, they don't have any laws decided yet. But in the United States, the only way to legally own a ROM is to create it yourself. And not many of us are creating the ROMs ourselves. It's a very tiny part of the community that dumps the games and then puts it on the internet. And the act of even putting it on the internet in the United States is illegal.
Right.
So if they can ever find the people who are literally putting it up on all those download services, they would be in big trouble. And some have been caught in the past, but it's pretty rare.
Right.
Because they've realized by now VPNs and
God,
just do, like, if you're going to do something illegal like that, there's very easy workarounds to hide your trail.
Well, and not to mention you just hop out of the country for a little bit and pop it up on a
lot of people dumping ROMs are probably not going to be like, you know what, I gained zero from this. Let me spend a bunch of money to cross borders.
Hey, you never know.
Upload.
They could go on vacation,
especially when you can literally just use a VPN service and be in any country you want.
Yeah, quote unquote.
The thing is, I'm against basically what 90% of people who emulate games do, and that's download games they don't have and play them. Even on old emulators, like even when you're talking about SNES and NES, like, oh, those games are they're so old, who cares anymore? Like, Nintendo cares, they still sell them. So if you could still buy the game in some form somewhere, not from like a used game store, but I'm talking about like from Nintendo in some way, or from Square, or from EA, or whatever, then absolutely you should not be downloading a ROM illegally to play it. That's always been my opinion. But on the other side of things, like you, and there's obviously the programming side and all that, but it's one of those things where, okay, Breath of the Wild is playable in 4K and 60 FPS right now. That is amazing. I have not done it, but I have watched videos of it on YouTube, and I'm like, holy crap. So I want Odyssey that way. I want Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle that way. I want Fire Emblem Warriors that way. Every Nintendo game I want that way.
Right, exactly.
Like, let's just boot up Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, toss it on there, and make that in 4K for some reason. Maybe I'll try it out then. Like,
yeah.
It's one, and that's just 4K. Like, there's so many different mods, texture mods and lighting mods, and like it basically opens up the game to anything that happens with PC games in general with modding.
Right.
And to me,
some of those can be hilarious.
Yeah. But there's so many cool things that happen with mods. Like, that excites me about the community.
Right.
And I don't know where I really stand on all of it, because I guess if you're doing it completely legal, I don't have a problem with it. If you own a Switch, and I don't even think you need to own a Switch technically, but in order to dump it, you have to own one. So it is what it is. But if you own a Switch and you have, say, Super Mario Odyssey, and you dump that ROM yourself, and you're playing it on an emulator that's a legal emulator, which means it's using fully custom code, it's not taking code from Switch, and you're able to do whatever the hell you want, why would that bother me? Why would any of us care when people do that? Like, it doesn't affect you. They already bought the game. They didn't put it up on the internet. They're doing all this stuff themselves. Maybe they're sharing videos of it online, but who cares? Right. I don't see a problem with that. Maybe they're sharing the mods online, but not the actual ROM, because usually the mods, you have to have the ROM to use the mods. Right. Like, that doesn't matter to me. But the instant reaction every time I talk about this, or when I talked about homebrew and hacking, is that just so many Nintendo fans especially are like, no, this is the end. It's going to destroy the platform. It's like, did it destroy DS? It was way worse on Nintendo DS. Did it destroy 3DS? It's been really bad on 3DS as well. And yet the sales of DS and 3DS are fantastic. The sale of the games are fantastic. it hasn't really negatively impacted things. And it's one of those things where I feel like as fans, we've kind of bought into the corporate shtick. And Nintendo's corporate shtick has always been, they've even said this publicly, I think it used to be listed on their website even, that emulation and piracy are the biggest threats to gaming today. And I understand that stance as an overall company. If I worked at Nintendo, obviously I have to be against all of this.
Right.
But it's also one of those things where I don't think it's really that big of a community doing it, to be honest.
Right, for sure.
I think more people are upset about it than there are people actually doing it, especially on the newer systems, especially when we're talking about an emulator here for Switch. That, dude, Odyssey ain't going to be playable on this thing for the next 4 years.
Right, probably not.
I mean, emulators for Wii U can't even play most of the Wii U games yet. Emulators for the 3DS can play a huge chunk of the library, but not everything, and not everything perfectly.
Right.
You know, it's one of those things where emulation's not perfect anyways, so it's really kind of this niche community that really does it. It doesn't mean that niche community doesn't include primarily people who aren't buying the games.
Yeah.
But it does mean the community is so small that it hasn't really shown an impact on sales. I mean, all of the Pokemon games have been pirated to hell over the years, and the Pokemon sales, last I checked, are still averaging 15 million plus per generation. So it's like, why are we so worried about it?
I understand part of, like I said, I understand part of the thought process behind it, but whether it's actually going to come true or not, that's more than likely not going to happen. But the whole thought process behind this is the end of the system because partial emulation. I understand the thought process of the whole this could impact sales, but if it hasn't shown in the past impact sales, should we be this worried? That's the thing.
Well, the thing is a lot of people will bring up things like the PlayStation Vita or the PlayStation, more so the PSP, the PlayStation Portable, where it had tons and tons of sales of the system. Sold 80 million units, but the games didn't sell that well. It was pirated to hell. And the thing is, that kind of piracy is even different than emulation because now we're talking about something else. We're talking about taking ROMs and running them locally on the system. That's not considered emulation at that point. That's just piracy, straight up piracy. And I feel like we need to make a distinction between that and emulation.
Right.
Emulation is completely different. Emulators are legal. It is always illegal to take a ROM and put it on your system and play it unless it's unless obviously you bought it at the eShop or whatever.
Right.
So I think we do need to make that distinction as well. We really should not consider people who are pirating games to play on the system through homebrew or whatever versus people using emulators. I feel like those are two completely different crowds.
Right.
And I feel like that is what was so upsetting, I think, when Pokemon Moon leaked, is that when Pokemon Moon leaked, people were pirating that locally on 3DSs to play versus just emulating it.
Yeah, playing it on a PC somewhere, doing stuff like that. Yeah, no.
God, I need to try. That's all right.
Do you want to just
no? We're gonna be done.
I was gonna say, you want to just go over to.
So it is what it is. I'm actually really curious in our audience thoughts on this. I know a lot of your guys' thoughts already are going to be F this, F that. Who cares about it? This is really bad, and you're going to give me all the reasons it's bad, and then you'll have the one or two people telling me all the reasons it's good. I don't really, and some people already get even mad at us for drawing attention to that this is happening. Like, why are you even talking? Because it's
news.
It's not just that it's news; it's that it's part of the gaming community. We can't just ignore that it exists.
Yeah.
I don't think it's proper for us, regardless of your stance, to be ignorant on this. If you are staunchly against it, do you honestly understand why you're staunchly against it, or is it just because Nintendo said so?
Yeah.
Like, have you actually done the research to know? And the more you're educated on it, the more well-rounded your thoughts will be. And maybe there's plenty of evidence to support your thoughts, I'm sure. But you should know what that evidence is instead of being like, oh, let's just not even touch on these topics. Like, we're at Nintendo Prime, we've never been afraid to criticize Nintendo. We've never been afraid to touch on specific topics, whether they're attacking YouTubers or whether or not they're making shitty policies. Like, we've never been afraid to cover the wide gambit of things. So why would we be afraid to talk about ROM and emulation and hacking? Like, it's part of the community.
It is.
And we don't talk about it so much that I feel like a majority of our audience is going to be that crowd. Like, no, that's like if you want to find a big crowd for that, go to websites like GBA Temp and stuff like that. Like that's you're going to find a lot of hackers and modders at places like that. But not, I mean,
right.
This is just we talk about news, we talk about topics, we create original content, and so far, nothing we have done or created has been based around hacking and emulation. It's just something that happens. So we talk about it as progress is made because I feel like it's an important thing that we should know. We should know that this is happening. Even if you're against it, you should still understand that it's going to happen.
Right.
And you can't stop it.
For sure.
Like there's nothing we can do to stop it from happening. So we should have a discussion. So I actually want to have this discussion with you guys. So go off in the comments and we'll at least I will try to go back and forth with some of you guys on this because I'm torn. I'm one of those guys I'm on both sides of the fence. I really love the custom stuff, the legal way to do it, but then also I realize a lot of it exists for piracy and I'm out for that.
Right.
So like it's I understand both sides, and I'm for both sides, and I'm constantly arguing with myself in my head over it. But one thing for sure, we're going to continue to cover it here at Nintendo Prime as progress is made. And here's the thing, progress updates don't come very often for this stuff. We're talking like when there's a major update once a year. So
right. I just want to kind of touch on, kind of rehash a little bit of my thing. As a dev, I understand the work that goes into both sides of it. So that's kind of, it's crazy the amount of work that these guys have put in to even just have this boot to a menu.
Oh yeah,
that's just absolutely crazy and amazing.
100% custom code,
and it's amazing.
Can't use any of the code from Switch.
Right, but at the same point in time, I also know how much time and energy that these devs have put into creating the game as well. So that's, I think, the major part of why I think it's, there is a terrible part of it. Is because these people have put so much time and effort into that game that's the part that makes me the most angry when it gets pirated. For sure. When it's emulated, they say emulation is the most sincere form of flattery. I mean, I guess, why not? But I both sides have put in so much effort and work that it just amazes me.
It is truly amazing. So again, let us know what you guys think about it, and maybe we'll have future conversations on this based on your guys' remarks. Let's move on to our second topic. Might not be our last topic, but it's the only planned topic we have. PAX East has been happening around the time that we're recording this, and there's been a lot of games being shown off for Switch that many of us have been wanting to see for a long time. The fact that this is how we're seeing it actually feels a little weird. Let me give you an example. Dark Souls Remastered. Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, Crash Insane Trilogy. We're seeing off-screen docked footage of this all coming out of PAX East that I feel like we should have gotten a Nintendo Direct. Like actual Switch
actual game footage, not off-screen.
So we're seeing it for the first time. We're seeing there's a whole bunch of other games as well. And what I'm actually wondering here are what are our thoughts overall on Switch continuing to get AAA games in the future? Because we're seeing some pretty impressive stuff. I'm pretty impressed by what we've seen. Wolfenstein 2 actually looks a little bit better than Doom did back in the day. And there's actually rumors going on out there now about PlayStation 5 possibly landing this year, next year, soon. Wow. So in wake of that, in wake of seeing these games running on Switch, what do you think is the future landscape for AAA games on Switch?
I honestly don't know why you wouldn't bring if you're like an independent developer or even, just some of these other major developers that aren't Nintendo. I don't know why you wouldn't bring your game to Switch. The console's portable. It's heavy duty, it's been shown to play AAA games. So I don't know why you wouldn't want your game on there. Why wouldn't you want it on as many platforms as possible? Is my thought. I understand, the whole possibly having to have multiple code bases and stuff like that, but
limitations.
Yep. But
there's also the whole thought process, like say PlayStation 5 comes out and you still have Xbox One X, PlayStation 4 Pro on the market. Some developers just want to work with the best of the best. And they have a certain visual style, certain physics engine, a certain whatever they want to do that requires more power than Switch has. So to them, sometimes they don't want to have to, quote unquote, dumb it down to fit onto Switch.
Right.
And like I feel like the reason we haven't seen AAA full support jump on board yet is because of that kind of a look. We understand these other platforms; they're way more powerful. We really don't want to dumb down our game. We don't want to see our game ever run at sub HD on Switch, and that's probably what would happen. That's what we've seen happen. The thing is these games that they're showing off now look really good. Dark Souls Remastered looks phenomenal. Granted, it's an old game remastered, not the greatest example, but Wolfenstein 2 is a current gen game, and it looks amazing. I'm just not really sure where the future of AAA is if PlayStation 5 is coming so soon, because like it or not, Sony is the market leader for home consoles.
Right.
And what they do, developers tend to follow. Even when PlayStation 3 was $600 and no one was buying it, third-party developers kept supporting the platform. They're kind of with Sony. They're like tied to them.
Yeah.
What Sony does, they feel is the way the industry is going to go. So I do worry a little bit. I think if, I don't think PlayStation 5 is coming out this year, by the way. I think I think dev kits are definitely out there. I think a lot of dev kits are out there. But if Sony's being smart, dev kits should be on the market over a year before you release a platform.
Right.
Give developers time to experiment and get their games on there instead of trying to rush it out.
Get used to the
so
way
I really don't think we're going to see it till next year anyways.
Right.
At the earliest. 2020 probably is a better bet, but next year at the earliest. And especially since it's being based on GPU architecture that isn't even publicly available yet.
Right.
So...
Right. No,
I feel like they have to have a certain price range to keep in mind too. It can't go past $500. Yeah, so it's I don't know. I find myself a little more concerned than I was a week ago with PlayStation 5 rumors out there. And granted, they're rumors, so it is what it is. But Switch has not really seen full AAA support yet, and I'm not giving up on it yet. I think E3 is going to be really telling. If at E3 we don't get all these games announced for Switch, like Madden and a new FIFA and Call of Duty and like all the big dogs, Assassin's Creed, whatever. Like if these games aren't announced for Switch, then it's like, okay, Switch might be more like a Wii U where, in this first year or two, it's getting some late ports of games, but that's all you're getting. Sorry.
That's going to be a port machine and an indie, a port and indie machine.
And Nintendo first party.
Right.
So that's the concerns that people have. And I feel like games shown today, like as great, as these games are looking at PAX, they're still just old ports. Besides Dark Souls Remastered, they're just old ports.
Well, for sure. So that also means then the reason why they probably look so amazing is the fact that you're comparing them against older games.
Sure. Well, the thing is, like as I said, the most impressive ones, obviously, Wolfenstein came out last holiday. That's really not that long ago.
Right.
It's definitely current gen, and it looks really, really good. I'm hoping it sells well because unfortunately, despite the game getting really good reviews, it just did not sell well for whatever reason on the other platforms. So maybe it's because people were waiting for Switch.
Right.
Maybe they're like, you know what, we want to take that game everywhere. We played Doom. Fantastic. We're going to wait and play it on Switch. That's what I'm hoping anyways, because I think that game deserves the sales. Because that game, again, there's no tacked-on multiplayer. There's no microtransaction DLC out the ass. It's straight-up old-school AAA gaming. Single-player focused FPS game. That doesn't... Think about it. Single-player focused FPS game. It's like in a market of its own.
Right. At
like
least
Bethesda
now it
is like in a market of its own, making these single player.
Used to be
games.
a monster market, but
not anymore. And that's part of it, obviously, too, is it doesn't have that replay value. I guess for some people, I don't know. Like, here's the thing: when people tell me a game like Wolfenstein 2 doesn't have replay value, I'm like, and Breath of the Wild does. Single player game, beat it. Well, I have this to go back to doing this. So you do in Wolfenstein 2.
So instead of taking the same path, how about you try hiding behind this cover instead of that cover?
There's things to find and unlock and discover. It's like, I think it's an FPS stigma, probably.
It is.
People are like, oh, I'm a first-person shooter. It has to be multiplayer or I get bored. I'm like,
yeah, right.
Oh my God.
Right.
Whatever happened to just killing Nazis and being happy about it?
Couldn't tell you.
I mean,
I couldn't tell you.
That's what this game is. It's an alternate reality where the Nazis won the war. And all you do is you spend like the whole game killing Nazis. That should just feel amazing on its own. And that used to be a big selling point. Now today it's more like, it's good. It's good, but skippable.
I don't want to say is it almost to the point where it's been overdone? the whole Nazi killing thing? I mean,
it was in the early 2000s for sure. There was like every war game on the planet, multiplayer or single player, was all about killing Nazis. But then it went away for a long time. Then Wolfenstein came back out, and then obviously we had the recent Battlefield 1, and then we had the Call of Duty.
Going back to...
Oh, geez. Well, yeah, Call of Duty World War II. But again, did World War II maybe hurt the sales of it? I don't know. Like, you're talking about a multiplayer game primarily. I know there's a campaign in it, but a multiplayer game primarily versus a fully built out single player experience that is a sequel to a game that sold really, really well. Right. So I don't know. I mean, I hope this doesn't prove the trend that multiplayer games are just everything needs multiplayer now. Unless you're Nintendo for some reason. And even Nintendo does local co-op for everything.
Right.
No online co-op. Come on, Kirby Star Allies. The one thing it's missing. It needs online co-op. It would be nuts, but it would be fun. It would be fun. But maybe it's because they don't have a good voice chat system. Oh!
Hey!
But yeah, I'm actually really curious on your guys' thoughts on what you think the future of AAA games are on this platform. Do you think PlayStation 5 has any effect on it? Do you think Switch is in its own world and we're just going to get what we get, and by this time next year, all we're going to be able to talk about is, oh my God, Switch is getting everything. Which I hope that's the world. That's the world I want to live in.
Right, exactly.
And I also want to live in the point where it's getting everything. Oh, and we're getting a Switch Pro. More on that in another podcast. So the final time is actually whatever the hell we want. You said you had something you want to talk about?
Yeah, I know. We've kind of discussed this, just you and I, not anywhere near.
Well,
anywhere near.
If we haven't talked about it on the podcast, it never happened. That's the way I live my life.
And this isn't really Nintendo related so far. It's E3. It's E3 related.
It's whatever we want.
Right.
Let's do it.
So I don't know if this is 100% true or not, but from what I've seen, it sounds like Microsoft is not going to have an actual like major booth at E3.
Okay.
They're going to have their own booth at their Microsoft whatever in LA.
Sure.
What do you think of that? And is that going to be kind of something that may spawn off other companies to do something similar, or
I think a lot of that has to do with just like EA is now with the EA Play thing they do outside. So they don't have a huge presence in the building anymore. It's all outside the building. A lot of that has to do, one, with public access. From when they first allowed the public in back in 2016, and then last year, and probably this year, it's hell. Mm-hmm. I mean, they tried fixing it, I think, by limiting, when, like, we're using the public access passes this year, basically, and our access isn't as full as it was for, like, media who get not just early floor access. They can be there like 2 hours before we can.
Right.
On every day but the last day. So, they tried fixing it that way to kind of cut down on the crowds for the people that are trying to get work done. But it's still one of those things to me that I wonder if because there's a lot of interesting things revolving around E3, where the ESA is considering moving it to a different venue, especially now that the crowds are bigger. When it's been at the LA Convention Center, like dating back to the early 90s, like almost from the beginning, it's always been here. They've tried a couple of different venues, but they've always come back to the convention center. I think that's part of it is Microsoft and like EA, especially when they're outside, is like, look, because more public's coming, we can open this up to even more people. The issue, obviously, doing it during E3 is you start separating things. Like, oh, now I have to go over here for EA, and then I have to go in the building for Nintendo and Sony and 2K and whatever, Bethesda, and then I have to go all the way across town to go see my Xbox, and it starts getting to the point where you're making people have to pick and choose. For someone like us, it's not a big deal. Like, if we were, Xbox Prime or whatever, well, it's great for us.
Right.
We go to just the Xbox event, and we get to skip everything else.
Right. No, for sure.
That's great, but like for people like IGN, which might not be as big a deal for them because they have a huge staff, but still, it's one of the things like now you have to go to multiple buildings, and that kind of becomes a hassle. I think a lot of it just has to do with, one, there's been an issue with the crowd sizes, and two, Microsoft just wanting a little bit more control. Microsoft themselves is doing some interesting stuff where with their games as a service thing with the Game Pass, I think they're not going to leave the console space. I think they're still going to have, even next generation, like Xbox 2, I think is going to be one of those super high-end products. I think they realize with X that, you know what, we're going to stop trying to be like this mainstream underbox TV. We're going to go for that high-end user. So, yeah, PlayStation 5 might get a jump on the market, but then Xbox will be like, look, we're releasing something that's like twice as powerful as PlayStation 5. That's just the way it is. We're going to be the best way to play games on a 4K TV at your house. And if you don't want to do that, you can still get Game Pass and go play it on your PC, or heck, maybe Switch at that point will allow Game Pass on there. Like, you just don't know. I think Microsoft's focusing more on their services than on hardware, and they'll keep doing hardware just to do hardware, just to say they have a box.
Right.
And plus it gives them a fallback, right? If games as a service crashes, but oh crap, well now here's our budget Xbox.
Right.
But I think a lot of it just has to do with that changing tides. They don't have a lot of exclusive games. Their platform isn't really leading in the market, and I think they're just like, look, we're going to start cutting back expenses a little bit, do it in our own building, which costs them, cost of electricity, because it's their building, and just kind of leave it at that. Now, here's the thing: from what I saw, they're still going to be at E3,
right?
They're going to have a booth. It's going to be smaller than it was when we went 2 years ago,
right?
And to me, it really wasn't that big.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: a lot of their floor space was for back end places, so it was kind of like, where like Nintendo has, here's your big floor booth, and then they have those little side booths, and that's like all their back end stuff. Like Microsoft just had one big area, so like they had us warden off a lot of that for backroom stuff. So it was kind of maybe bad decision making on their part. They could have probably got some more space. They're Microsoft; they could buy whatever they want.
Right, and honestly, I'm kind of surprised that if they, that second showroom, there was quite a bit of open space over there.
Well, that second showroom's always, because like there's the East Hall and the West Hall.
Right.
I think it's the West Hall where all the big companies are at, or not all the big companies, all the platform holders. And I think it's always been that one hall is the one hall you want to be in. That has Nintendo, has Sony, has Microsoft. That's where you want to be. Because that's the big dogs. Yeah. And you can get your games in their booth, and you can also have your side booths. You also have IGN in there, and GameSpot, and all those companies usually have their booths in there as well. Yeah. It's a great place. It's like the best way to go get merch and all the free merch they hand out.
I noticed, actually thinking back on it now, I kind of saw the pattern of, you have your three major console creators, and then your news media having their booths in the one thing. And then in the other hall, it was more of
everybody else,
game developers and stuff like that. Because it was
game studios.
LA Noire was there.
2K.
Yeah, 2K was there. WB was there. I mean, all in the other smaller.
Yeah. Those are game publishers and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, they're all over there, and like that's the way it's always been. It's always been that way. Like there were still other companies that weren't media in that area. Like I remember, I think Razer or something was in there.
Yep. And then the chair company was in there too.
Yeah, that was in the smaller one. I'm talking about in the main.
Yeah.
And so and there was a lot of room in the East Hall, I believe. Where the WB and the 2Ks and all this stuff were, and the really cool custom PCs. But like a lot of that is also because, one, it's really damn expensive to buy floor space at E3. It's a problem that's existed for a long time that the ESA has just never budged on. And I think when you start seeing like even Microsoft starting to cut out, EA is not in there anymore. Like a huge chunk of that floor used to be taken by EA in there.
Right.
EA is gone, and they have no one else to take that floor space. It's kind of like they need to start lowering their prices to get a lot more indie devs to come in, stuff like that. Fill it up.
Right. No, for sure.
There's plenty of floor space. Fill that up. But at the end of the day, I just think Microsoft is just trying to be smart financially, and they're still going to be there. That they made it clear on Twitter. We're still going to be at E3, like in the building. It's like that's fine. They're still going to have their press conference. It's just it is what it is. I think it's just changing tides. It's just like Nintendo used to always have press conferences, like live press conferences, and now it's all pre-recorded video and then Treehouse Live right on the show floor. Everyone's just kind of, we're in this world of experimentation as everything's starting to move to digital consumption, both for all the people that attend E3. A vast majority of people that enjoy E3 are sitting at home watching it on their phones, on their TVs, and on their computers and on their game consoles. Millions upon millions upon millions of people worldwide. And I feel like when that's happening, that now Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, they're trying to find ways to best leverage things to hit the most consumers in the best way they think they can. So I think they're less concerned on consumers who are at the event and more concerned on how can we make this better for people at home. And I still argue to this day the best way is, if you're going to have game demos playable there, release them on your platforms to play. But I know there's a ton of complications to pull that off.
Right.
Man, I don't know. It's just one of those things that sucks to deal with. It sucks that we're going to have less floor time because we didn't get media passes. But I'm still pushing really hard to get us a booth tour. Trying really, really hard. I'm like, we don't have media passes. Please. We're we're there as media. Like, come on. Trying to press every person I know at Nintendo. I'm like, come on, just slip us in.
Yeah.
Like last day, just slip us in.
Something. Yeah. We don't even have to be,
like whatever. Spot opens up. Give me a call.
Right.
We'll get out of line. Even though we've been waiting for 5 hours, and we'll come.
We can just slip in with somebody else. They won't even know we're there.
Yeah. You know what? I should be like, hey. So I know that YouTube guy. Hey, can we just say we're your cameramen?
Yeah, right.
Get us in there.
Yeah.
Anyways, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, that was just the main thing. I was just hoping that this doesn't kind of all of a sudden. I still realize that they're going to have a presence at E3.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of hoping that this doesn't kind of where EA is. I don't know where Microsoft's.
Yeah, EA is just right outside.
Right. Where I don't know where Microsoft's building is in comparison to the convention center. I'm just hoping that
Probably
eventually this doesn't.
I think when we were walking around, we saw a Microsoft building. Really close by.
It's possible.
So,
but if it's on the other side of town, that's gonna be a pain in the arse.
Well, as I said, I just think this is all messaging to EA, to the ESA, that they need to get a bigger venue that's more open, that can allow more people in, and not. They need to start treating this like a PAX East or PAX West, where you just need a massive venue that can handle thousands of people publicly and has plenty of room for your back private room stuff. LA Convention Center, I think, is fine when before they open it up to the public. Now that they open it up to the public, I think everyone knows now we need a bigger venue, and no one's doing anything about it.
Right.
I mean, to put it this way. When you go to an event like PAX East or PAX West, you do not have to wait in line for 4 hours to play a demo.
Yeah.
You don't. You just don't have to do that.
Right.
And you do have to do that at E3. So it's something that needs to be fixed if they're letting public in.
Right. My biggest fear is I think I just hope it doesn't start splintering E3 off into multiple, or everybody's pretty much in their own venue because they're trying to find space and things like that. So that's what I'm hoping.
I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it for now, because for right now, E3 is still the biggest event in gaming, despite the fact that Gamescom is technically bigger in terms of its venue and everything and the amount of attendees. But still the biggest event in gaming, and I feel like all this is just telling the ESA that it's time to get your crap together. Because ESA has experimented with like 2 separate E3s before. Like, here's our public E3 and here's our media E3. And like as media, it's cool to get that access, but it's also one of those things that I'm fine if I don't get any special treatment as media, because then it's on me to use my media credentials to try to get that backroom access. That's where you get the like a lot of the videos we're seeing out there on all these games are backroom access. These aren't on the show floor.
Right. No, for sure.
So that I feel like that's what needs to happen. Just a bigger venue. Don't know where that could be. I don't live in LA. I'm not sure how many more venues they have bigger than the convention center, but there's got to be something out there that's bigger. Or if it's not, then maybe they need to move it out of LA. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the location is going to affect much, because while LA is a convenient location because Microsoft's like over there, and at the end of the day, yeah, a lot of media stuff are there, but they'll travel,
or even
they'll travel. Nintendo travels from Redmond, Washington, to like you can find even you can stick in California if you have to go to San Francisco or something.
Right. Well,
you can find venue bigger.
Or
than
even then, maybe the ESA just needs to even just go right outside of LA and build their own convention center.
They're not going to do that.
Well,
they're not going to do that.
You never know.
The ESA's got the ESRB under their wing and everything else, MPD stuff. They ain't got that kind of money. They have money. I'm
sure if they'd ask, I'm sure some of these game companies might
pitch
in. You think?
No, these game companies pay the ESA for the privilege to even be there.
Yeah, that's true.
ESA is not knocking at Nintendo's door. Hey, come to E3. They're like, we're at E3. Where's our money for your floor space?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, no, the ESA is a greedy as hell company, but you know what? Any company that's for profit is.
Well, right.
Even companies that aren't for profit probably are. Yeah. You just got to dig into those financial. The CEO is still taking home $2.3 million in a nonprofit company.
Right. No,
All right.
for sure.
Well, that's good, dude. I don't have anything else to talk about. I don't think you do either. So, again, we'll see you guys next week. Hopefully, Darren's back, and it'll be a longer podcast then. I promise you that. I'll try to get on a special guest. Reminder that you can actually get this podcast early on Patreon at patreon.com/Nintendo Prime. You can catch the live stream of it if you are a $10 backer as it's happening. Otherwise, $5 backers get early access to the audio version a day early, at least a day early, sometimes more. And yeah,
$20 backers.
$20 backers can be on the podcast. We have some $20 backers. I put up the post for them to come on this month. So far, no one signed up. So, I mean, every single slot this month is open if you want to come on and become a $20 backer. Here's the thing, though, is if you become a $20 backer, you do not get to get on the podcast. This month, it will be the following month after you have been charged. Because I want to avoid where we give you something and then you back out and never pay for that actual tier. So now we just, because all that's going to do is encourage people to be like, yeah, I'll support you for $20, and then all of a sudden our Patreon just starts jumping up to like $1,000, and then when it actually goes to charge it, oh yeah, by the way, none of us are here.
Yeah, right.
So you really only made $100, and you just had to literally hassle and make all these schedules work with different people when they're not actually supporting you.
Right.
So it is what it is.
Right.
Thank you for tuning in so much to the Nintendo Prime podcast. We'll catch you in the next one.
Peace out.